Well, hello again, my friends, and for those of you who don't know this channel, my name's Adrian Gilbert. I would describe myself as a Christian hermeticist, which means to say I'm very interested in all things Christian, but particularly the mysticism side of it and the connections to the ancient hermetic teachings of Egypt. And I see Christianity and Egypt as being connected much more than you might think. But that's not what I want to talk about today. I want to talk to you about Ukraine and Russia and what I think is going to be the outcome of the Ukraine war. Now you might say, well, how can you know? Are you some kind of clairvoyant? No, I'm not. Not to that extent. But what I have done is I've studied prophecy in great detail. Especially the prophecies of Daniel and the prophecies in the book of Revelation. In fact, I've made 25 programs on the book of Revelation, the Apocalypse. And if you're interested in this stuff, it's all there. It's on YouTube for you to have a look. But what I want to talk about is who benefits from what's happening and how does this conflict between Russia and Ukraine tie in with prophecies in the Bible. So let me get back to basics from the start, you might say. If you turn to the Matthew Gospel, chapter 24, it tells you about Jesus on top of the Mount of Olives with his disciples, and they ask him questions, and he starts telling them about the end of the world. He describes the situation at the Temple of Jerusalem, and I've been up on the Mount of Olives, and you can look over the Temple Mount there, and he says it will all be destroyed and in ruins. There won't be one stone left on top of another in Jerusalem, and that did actually happen in 70 AD. But he also makes prophecies about the end of the world, the end of the age. And you should read them because this is out of the master's mouth, you could say. And he says how there will, various things are going to happen. There's going to be terrible disasters. There's going to be wars continuing right up to the end. And have a look. He says it'd be like the time of Noah. Time of Noah, what happened in the time of Noah? There was a great corruption in the world, and Noah's flood happened. And only Noah and his family were saved. And he's comparing the situation with that. So I believe that we are living in that period, the run-up to that period. And I've got very good reasons for saying that, based on what's happening in the heavens. He told us to look at the sky, and what's happening on earth, and what we see happening in politics worldwide, and what we see happening with the church. Or churches, I should say. So there are very, very good reasons for thinking that this is the time of the end. We can't carry on the way we have been, using up resources, more and more people on the planet, more and more, the systems that bring food to our tables are being stretched, and the systems, it only takes a small upset, and the oil price goes through the roof, and that affects everything. So we're living in very, very dangerous times. So I see this war that's going on in Ukraine and with Russia as being part of this scenario. But you might be asking, in what way? Well, it's changing the balance of power. And that's what it's really all about. And that's why I think it's been why it's happening, why Putin seems to have gone mad and launched this war, which he's losing, by the way. He's already lost this war. All he can hope for now is to get some kind of armistice and a truce where he hangs on to what he's already got, which is the Crimea and the Donbass, hang on to that and make some kind of peace with Ukraine. Of course, the Ukrainians don't want to do that. They want to get back at least the Crimea and preferably the Donbass as well. So they're in no mood to have an armistice because they believe that he's just going to rearm and in a few years' time he'll have another go. Or if it's not him, whoever comes after him will have another go. But that's not the nub of the problem, and that's not the real situation. The situation is that it's changing the balance of power, and the Russians are losing so much in the way of equipment, and estimates say they maybe lost a 250,000 men dead on the battlefield, not to mention casualties. And it's upset their economy totally, and it's destroyed their relations with Western Europe and America. So they're losing their best trading markets for selling oil and gas. They've actually shot themselves in the foot. So the best that Putin could really hope for, I think, is an armistice and a truce and a chance to lick his wounds and prepare for another go maybe in a few years' time. The Ukrainians, on the other hand, they have their own objectives, and the primary objective that they have is, first of all, to have NATO membership, to be part of NATO. They want to turn towards the West. They want to be part of the West in Europe, as opposed to the Russian world of the East. They want to be under the umbrella, the nuclear umbrella, but also the umbrella of if you attack one, you attack all. So that if Russia ever does attack again, it's going to bring in all of the European powers who are members of NATO, and that's nearly all of Europe, plus America, Canada, and maybe some others. So it's a big ask, but that's what they primarily want. They also want to join the EU, the European Union, because they see how countries to the west of them, particularly Poland, have benefited so much from being part of this larger group. Yes, there are tensions in Europe itself, and I'm not pro-EU by any means, but I can see from their point of view, to be part of this bloc looks a very attractive possibility. But that's not the issue either. Whoever wins, if Russia manages to keep the Donbass and Crimea, or Ukraine manages to join the West, NATO and the EU, the balance of power has shifted, and it's not shifted in the way you might think. Who has really benefited and who is really benefiting from this war is neither of those parties. It's actually to the south of them, Turkey. Now, you have to understand that Turkey, what we call Turkey today, is only the remnant of what was a very large empire before the First World War, the Ottoman Empire. It was ruled by a sultan. It had lands or control over most of the Middle East, and it had links throughout Central Asia, where a large percentage of people actually speak Turkish, even now, even more so then. Turkey sees itself as, or it did, it was the caliphate. It was the central empire of Islam prior to 1924, when Kemal Ataturk abolished the caliphate. He wanted Turkey to become westernized, just as Ukraine wants to be today. He wanted to turn to the West. He wanted Turkey to modernize, to get industries, to stop living in the past. And he passed through all sorts of changes. He got rid of the Arabic alphabet they've been using and introduced the Roman alphabet, for example. So if you go to Turkey now, you can actually read. You won't understand what it means, but you can actually read the words, the signposts and so on. If it were written in Arabic, unless you spoke Arabic and you knew how to read it, you couldn't read them. So he actually changed direction. But this direction in recent years has been reversed by President Erdogan, who's the current president and president for life, I think. Well, he's just been re-elected, but I think there's not much chance of him not being re-elected. And he has a policy. He's trying to rebuild. He wants Turkey to be great again. You know, Donald Trump wants America to be great again. He wants Turkey to be great again. In fact, what he really wants is for Turkey to become a caliphate again. Yeah, they've actually got all the stuff. They've got the hair from the beard of Muhammad. They've got his cloak. They've got his sword. They've got all the stuff, this banner. And it's all in the Topkapi Museum. I've seen it. It's there. He wants to reunite the Islamic countries to form a bloc of their own, a counterweight to the West, a counterweight to Europe. He'd like to have joined the EU, but there's not much chance of that. So he sees an opportunity now to bring Turkey to become the central authority of Islam again, as it was before the 1914, before 1924 even. So this is a major shift that we are seeing. And why is this important from the point of view of Bible prophecy? It ties in with, if you read the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39, they tell you about the invasion of the Holy Land led by someone they refer to as Gog of Magog. Gog. And it talks about how God is going to take Gog and put a hook in his lip, and he's going to lead him forwards with all his armies, with all his allies. And his allies, if you read the list of allies, they are all what are now Islamic countries. And Gog is going to lead this huge army to invade Israel, to destroy the Jewish nation once and for all. That's the aim. And there's a good reason why he might want to do that. I don't think Erdogan himself has particular animus for Israel. They have their problems from time to time. But that is the central unifying act of a caliph to bring together Islam and show, I am the guy, I am the leader, I am the one that's going to fulfill the desire of all Muslims to eradicate this Jewish state and bring it back into Islam. And they've tried a number of times. There's been, I think, 4 wars between the Jews and the Arabs, the most notable being the Six-Day War and the Yom Kippur War. And both of those times, the Jews wiped wiped the battlefield, as it were, and won. But they only have to lose once, and Israel is gone. So it talks in the Bible about this great war of Gog of Magog. And why do I think that Turkey is Gog, or particularly maybe this man? It might be a later one, but I think it might well be Erdogan. And the reason I say this is that there was a kingdom called Lydia in Turkey, in the sort of central western part of Turkey. Not that far from Ankara, by the way, which is the current capital of Turkey. And it had a king called, in Greek, he's called Gyges, Gyges, but that Y is pronounced like a U, so it should be pronounced Gyges. And that ES on the end is typical of Greek and Latin and certain other languages. They put things on the end so that they can decline nouns. Yeah. His name in his own language was probably Gog. And we know from the Assyrian texts that they call him Gugu. So I think this Gog, or Gyges, who usurped the kingdom, by the way. There's a whole story about that. I won't go into it here, but you can read it in Herodotus, how Gyges usurped the kingdom when he spied on the king's wife undressing at the king's behest. And then she said to him, I know what you've done, and I'm going to tell my husband, and you'll be executed, because it would be too much of an insult to him. Either you kill my husband, or I'm going to do that. So he kills the husband, marries her, and he becomes king. And you have a dynasty running from that. So he's a usurper. So the usurper, Gog, I think is what's being referred to as Gog in Ezekiel. And Gog was only, I think, about 100 years, maybe a bit less, before the time of Ezekiel. So people would have known about this. So I see this as a coded reference to Turkey and the power in Turkey. Now, where does that leave Russia and Ukraine? Well, Ukraine has to stay on good terms with Turkey. Turkey controls the straits leading through Constantinople, or Istanbul as it's called now, leading to the Sea of Marmara and hence into the Black Sea. So you have the connection between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, the Aegean Sea and Mediterranean, and hence the rest of the world, for countries like Ukraine and southern Russia and Georgia. That's major trade routes for them. So the Ukrainians have to stay on good terms with Ukraine. Russia, I think, is going to be licking its paws for quite a long time yet. And it too has to stay on good terms with Turkey if it wants ships from the remaining ports which it has. Maybe it's still got the Donbass with the ports there, but there are other ports on north of Georgia going up to the entrance to the Azov Sea. So they could be still exporting, and from places like Rostov-on-Don. They want to export their grain and things as well. So they have to stay on good terms with Turkey too. So those two are not going to be too involved with this business. They may even be allies with Turkey. I rather doubt it, but they may. The European Union, I think, is going to be in a state of chaos before very long. There are going to be more and more countries like Britain who see the elite running the European Union as disenfranchising the people. They're unelected. They appoint themselves and they make laws that they want that suit them very nicely, thank you very much. They seem to be pocketing an awful lot of money for themselves out of the taxes that they take from the ordinary people. And the people don't seem to get very much back from being members of the European Union. And more of the ordinary people are rising in revolt, particularly because they've allowed so many immigrants to come pouring into Europe, taking people's jobs and upsetting their way of life. And people are furious throughout Europe. So I think the European Union is going to be in a state of chaos within itself. It's not going to interfere in Israel. That leaves one other power, that's America. And you know what's happening in America. It's splitting. It's splitting between the Trumpites and the wokeites, let's call them. The two sides of, it's almost like the civil wars beginning all over again. There are people who are absolutely solid behind Donald Trump, and you have people who are absolutely hate and loathe him, will do anything to destroy him. Hence, I think he's been impeached twice, or is it 3 times? He's had all sorts of lawsuits thrown at him for this, that, and the other, and he's now being arrested for something in Georgia to do with his questioning the Georgian election, a part of the presidential election. So this is making people very, very angry on the Trump side, and it's dividing the situation in America more. So I think that there's always a tendency in the US to turn inwards and to say to hell with the rest of the world. We got everything we want here. We don't need them. They're just trouble. And we'll concentrate on sorting out ourselves. So you got this going on. You've got the chaos in Europe, and you've got the Russia knocked out of the scene, and you've got a rising empire of Turkey wanting to become the new caliphate, reuniting Islam under the banner of Muhammad, which they have, and saying, right, we're going to destroy Israel, we're going to get rid of this Jewish state, and we're going to have nice, pure Islam again in the Holy Land. And that is exactly the scenario that's depicted in Ezekiel 38 and 39. And it ends with the huge army of Gog being destroyed by some kind of supernatural phenomenon. I don't know exactly, well, nobody knows what it's going to be, but there's going to be some major thing, and this is just immediately prior to the return of Jesus Christ. So I want you to have a look and think about what's happening in our world from this bigger picture, the picture of prophecy, and see how it all hangs together once you understand what the real picture is. And I've done a lecture on the whole Gog of Magog invasion within my Book of Revelation series. Yes, the episode you want is episode 20, the Battle of Armageddon. That's in my Book of Revelation Apocalypse series. And I'll put the link down below here if you wish to have a look at that and come back to you on that. So thank you very much, and I wish you all well. And if you like my kind of work, have a look at some of my other lectures. You may like them. And I also have a college where I'm training people now how to develop themselves and prepare for what's coming to us now in the earth. We have to get back to the real way of development, the real Christianity that I believe has been forgotten for generations, and we have to re-find this. Everything depends on it. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll speak again.